sauce jar. I'm going to be repurposing it into a plant pot. First, I just washed out all the spaghetti sauce from the jar. Next, I peeled the label off of the jar. I found it a lot easier to peel when the label was wet. Now this step is completely optional, but I decided to paint my jar. So what you'll need if you decide to do that is paintbrushes, doesn't matter what size, some acrylic paint, I used pink, and also a cup of water just to dip your paintbrushes in. As it is currently winter, I had to get my dirt from outside and defrost it, so I'm just taking it from the bucket and putting it in the jar. It gets a little messy, so be sure to clean it all up afterwards. Now I'm putting my plant or my leaves into the jar because, again, it's winter and it's hard to find plants. For jar 2, you'll be repurposing an old jam jar into this cute, adorable little candle. Here's how to do it. For this activity, I'm using some rope I just found around my house, some shells, and a candle. So here I am just cutting some string and fitting it around the jar. Then I'm just tying a bow, and it makes the jar look a little prettier, just adds a little something to it. Next, I'm adding some shells to the bottom of the jar.
Wow.
Disregard my brother in the background. Next, I filled the jar with some water. Next, I added a candle into the jar so it just floats around. The next step is to light your candle. I suggest getting a parent to do this, so my dad just did it for me. Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome.
Look at those fancy match skills. The best part about the candle is that you can save electricity by lighting it, and you can use some natural light instead. Woo! On to the third jar. For this jar, we are repurposing an old coffee container. We'll be repurposing the coffee container into a pencil holder. So, decorating the jar is not essential, but it looks nicer. So you could paint the jar or tie a ribbon to it, doesn't really matter. But I had some leftover sequins from a school project, so I just decided to use those. What I'm doing is I'm taking the sequins and putting them into the jar at the bottom. This step can get a little messy, but make sure you take all the sequins and put all of them into the jar. You don't want to make a mess or waste any. Now you just need to decide what to put in your jar, but I feel like this is a really cool way of holding your pencils. Jar 4 contained jam from the farm, but now we're using it to make a drink glass. As you're going to be drinking from this jar, you're going to want to wash it out nice and fresh, maybe get some sponge action in there. Nice and clean. You can really fill your mason jar glass with any type of liquid you'd like, but I love lemonade, so I just decided to put some lemonade in mine. I got pretty lucky. My mason jar came with a hole already in the lid, but if you want to poke a hole in, then that's cool. I just stuck a straw through it and good to go. These mason jar cups are easy to make and fun and reusable, and they look pretty cool, so I would highly recommend you make them. Jar 5 is an old jam jar. I am repurposing the jam jar into a piggy bank or coin jar. What I'm doing now is I'm screwing off the top of the jam jar and removing the disc and screwing back the top without the disc. What you could also do is cut a slit in the top of the disc, but I did not know how to do that, so I just didn't. But if you would like to, that's also an option, so you can just put your coins in the little slit at the top, like a real piggy bank. This is a really simple activity, but I like the way the coins look in the mason jar, so I really recommend this. Jar 6 is an old glass coffee container. I'm going to be remaking it into a toothbrush holder. As you can probably see, I'm obsessed with this string, and I just find it very aesthetically pleasing when you tie it around the top of a jar. So I'm going to be using that a lot. So I'm just again tying a bow around the top of the jar. Again, this is just a decoration. You can do whatever you'd like to decorate it, or just not decorate it at all. But I feel like it's better to decorate it. It makes it look nicer. That's really all you need to do. Now you just can put your toothbrushes into it and you're good to go. I actually use this in my bathroom because I really like jars, and it's just a really inexpensive way to keep your toothbrushes. I really recommend this because it's really inexpensive and useful, and you can do it in like 5 seconds. Now I can't remember where I got jar 7, but I might have just picked it up at the dollar store. I'm repurposing this old glass jar into a picture frame. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this old picture of me and my sister, and I am going to just simply put it in the jar. Now I'm taking some more leftover sequins and I'm just putting them in the jar just to add a little bit of color and make it look just a little nicer. This again is messy, so make sure you clean up after yourself and don't waste any of the sequins. In my opinion, this is a really cute, inexpensive way to display your pictures. Jar 8 is an old jam jar. I'm repurposing this old jam jar into a lantern. I'm just unscrewing the cap, and I'm going to take some more rope and I'm going to just snip it, snip. And now I'm taking the rope and I'm tying the ends onto the mason jar lid. Make sure the knots are extra tight. And then I'm doing the same thing on the opposite side of the lid. And then you can just reattach the lid and you have a jar that's going to hang. Now at this point you can just plop your candle in and it'll all be great and dandy. But what I decided to do was, because I love shells and I wanted to make it look pretty, so I decided to put some shells into the jar. And I needed to readjust them a little bit. But then I'm just taking my candle and I'm plopping it into the jar. More readjustment. But now I'm good to go. Woo! Now to light my candle, you could get an adult to help you with this, but my dad was out, so he could not help me again. As you can see, my candle lighting skills are not as advanced as his, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Here's me almost burning my hand off, and match skills not on point. But the candle's lit and the lantern is functional. This lantern is a great source of light and it looks so super cute. So this jar was an old jar that I bought at Dollarama. I'm just repurposing this into some organizational containers. This is probably the simplest of all the projects, but all you have to do is take some of your favorite snacks or some spices and you just dump them in the jar. Simple as that. This is a really cute way of organizing your snacks and spices, so I really recommend this. It'll make your kitchen look great. This jar came from the farm, and now I'm going to repurpose it into a soap dispenser. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking my jar and I managed to recover an old soap pump from a soap bottle, and I'm just going to fit it into the top of my mason jar. You may need to do some readjustments and cut a little bit of the soap pump off, but fortunately for me, I was able to fit my soap pump into the mason jar as it is supposed to fit, without doing any cutting or readjusting. It might look a little bit weird, but it's a great way to store your soap, and it's completely reusable. So I highly recommend making it. In my opinion, I think the soap bottle does look a little bit weird, but it's completely reusable, and I'd highly recommend making it because it's very useful and very inexpensive.